Welcome to another short podcast on Dr. Hany Atchan. I'm not making any new videos on Dr. Hany Atchan. I'm not doing any new research on Dr. Hany Atchan. My research was extensive, and I really concluded it with my long video on his on his methodology and his philosophy. But since that long video, almost 5 hours long, was apparently too long for many of you, and you've been asking me to shorten it down or post some clips from that video. So I'm doing this really information extraction, if you like. And I'm going to make short videos extracting information from different chapters of that longer video, link of which I will be posting in the description, inshallah. So in this short podcast, in this shorter video, I'm going to talk about Tafseer Batini, how it is different from Tafseer al-Ishari of Sufiyyah, and how the menace of Tafseer Batini really began, how it was adopted by the Quraniyin, and how Dr. Hany Atchan uses it. I'm not going to give you any lengthy references. Again, if you want references, you'll have to go back to that original video. I'm not going to go into depth of any of it. I'm just going to try and keep this as short and as sweet as possible, inshallah, just to extract that information about Tafseer Batini from that longer video and present it here in this podcast. So, bi'awnihi ta'ala, inshallah, this is going to be a very short video. So join me. Let's do this. Let's begin in the name of Allah. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa salli wa sallim alayhi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tafseer Batini or Tafseer Batiniyyah. The word batin, it means the hidden, the makhfiyun, as opposed to zahir, the apparent. Allah says in the Quran, Huwa al-Zahiru, Huwa al-Batin, Huwa al-Awwal, Huwa al-Akhir. He is alone, He is the apparent, He is the hidden, and He is the Omega, Alpha and Omega. So, linguistically, the word batin means the hidden. Tafseer Batiniyyah as a term is used to denote to the tafsir mujarrad bil ra'yi, that discards the zahir. Now, what does this mean? This sentence that I just occurred is laden with references and needs a lot of explanation. Tafseer al-Batini, the term, is applied to any exegesis which primarily discards the zahir of a text, and it is a tafsir bil-ra'i al-mujarrad. An exegesis that is done through intellect alone, through one's opinion alone, and discards the zahir, the apparent of the Quran, the apparent of the verse of a given verse of the Quran, is called Tafseer Batini. What is the zahir of the text of the Quran, the nas of the Quran that we are talking about? The zahir is always based on the context, on the understood language. Forget the Quran for a minute. You take any text in any language, the first and foremost meaning of that text, the meaning of the text that could be 100% agreed upon by anyone and everyone, is the meaning of the contextual language when it is placed in the historical context itself. For example, take Shakespearean text. We understand Shakespeare's language through the idioms that were spoken in his time, the way the language was spoken in his time and the way it was understood in his time. If I say I watched television today, if I write this sentence down and say the world ends today, right after me writing this down, and after 1,000 years, 1,500 years, through an excavation, my book was discovered. If somebody reads this sentence that I wrote, I watched television today, they'll have to come back to my time. They'll have to reference my time, this era, to understand what the word television means. Our predecessors understood what VHS tapes meant. Our younger generations don't understand it. So if somebody writes, I used to collect VHS, how are they going to understand what VHS is? Unless and until they go back to that era to understand what it actually meant. This is simple. This is simple to understand. I don't need to bring you references from anywhere for you to understand this. This is simple logic. This is a simple way of saying things, right? Any text is understood first and foremost through its zahir, through its apparent meanings. Its meanings, the meanings of the language in context of the text itself and the historical context. The language is never understood in seclusion. You can't understand the language by language itself. You can never do that. The Batini, the Tafseer Batiniyyah, what does it do? It is first of all a tafsir bil-ra'yi al-mujarrad. It is a tafsir that is based on one's own opinion and intellect. He or she is not taking into account anything else, any tradition or anything else. Bil-ra'yi al-mujarrad. First of all, that is the first indicator. The second indicator is, through this ra'i al-mujarrad, he or she is discarding the zahir, the apparent meaning of the text of the Quran. That is called Tafseer Batiniyyah. For example, in Kitab al-Wadih fi Ulum al-Quran, Mustafa Zaib al-Bagha, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, says on page 238, huwa tafsir al-Quran al-Kareem ala ma'anin mukhalifatu li-zahir al-Quran al-Kareem. The Tafseer Batini is a tafsir, is an exegesis that is done in direct clash with the zahir meanings of the Quran, the apparent meanings of the ayat of the Quran. Al-Mufassirun Hayatuhum wa Manhajihim. This is another book about the exegesis and the tradition of exegesis in Islam. In volume 1, pages 86, 87, it is said that the Tafsir al-Batini is a subcategory of Tafsir bil-Ra'yi al-Mujarrad. It is a subcategory of the exegesis done through intellect and one's opinion alone. وقالوا إن المقصود بالقرآن باطنه دون ظاهره المعلوم باللغة. And they say, the ones who do this kind of exegesis, they say that the asl, the murad, the maqsood, the real meaning of the Quran is the hidden meaning, not the zahir meaning that could be known by the context of the language. This is Tafseer Batiniyyah. How did it start? Well, it started with Al-Mu'tazila. That is what Ibn Taymiyyah alayhi rahmah tells us. It started with the Mu'tazilites. The Mu'tazila did a logical exegesis of the Quran. They discarded all the supernatural in the Quran, and they wanted to do a logical exegesis of the Quran, a logical interpretation of Islam, to make it kind of in line with the philosophical and logical ideas from the Greeks, from the Greek philosophy. That's at least what I think the Mu'tazila were doing through my reading of their works. They were really doing away with anything supernatural, anything that you can't explain through logic. They'll do away with it. And so they were the ones who started with Tafseer al-Batini. They started to explain the verses of the Quran, doing away with the zawahir of the nas, doing away with the apparent meanings of the verses, and using the language alone, they came up with ideas and exegeses which were more in line with the logical and rational explanation. That is how the Tafseer Batini really began. It was then taken by the Shiite Rafidiyya. At that time, it was the Ismailiyya and Qaramitiyya. The Qaramitiyya, they came from the Ismailiyya, and they were the ones who actually said that there are 70 or more bawatin. There are 70 or more hidden meanings in each ayah of the Quran. And so if you really want to look at the guys who perfected this, they are the Shiites, the Ismaili and the Qaramitiyya. In fact, I give this complete reference in my longer video. I just want to go to it quickly. This is Nu'man al-Qadi in his Asas al-Ta'wil, very famous book. You'll find it on the internet. It's not a hidden secret. Nu'man al-Qadi, he was one of the most famous jurists of Ismailiyah. And he has this book, this treatise, Asas al-Ta'wil, in which he explains at length, if you really want to look into Tafseer al-Batini and what are the usul for Tafseer al-Batiniyyah, what are the adillah for doing Tafseer Batiniyyah, you'll find it in this book. This should be your number one go-to resource for that. And in this book he says, La budda li kulli mahsus min zahir wa batin. Everything that exists, that can be felt, that exists, has a zahir and a batin. Its zahir, its apparent existence, is the existence that our senses can learn about. The apparent can be learned through the senses. وَبَاطِنُهُ, and its hidden is actually the ilm, is actually the knowledge, because is the real knowledge, because the zahir is mushtamalun alayhi. The zahir is only based upon what is inside, what is hidden inside. So what is the more important? The hidden. What is the real knowledge? The hidden one. The apparent is just something superficial. It's just something for the senses to know it by. That is all that the zahir is. The asl, the maqsood, the murad is the batin. Now, I'm not going to go into amthila, into examples of this Tafseer Batini by the Shiite, by the Ismailiyya, Qaramitiyya, and later the Ithna Ashariya Imamiyya. I do that in my previous longer video. Very quickly, this was an explanation about Tafseer al-Batini. Now, what is Tafseer Ishari, the Tafseer that the Sufiya do? The Tafseer Ishari is when you do not do away with the zahir of the ayah, you don't discard it, but you say there are some hidden meanings to this ayah. For example, in Surah At-Tawbah, Allah says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, qatilu alladhina yalunakum min al-kuffari وَلْيَجِدُوا فِيكُمْ غِلْظَةً وَاعْلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ. This is ayah 123 of Surah Tawbah. In this ayah, because there is a word yalunakum min al-kuffar. The meaning, the apparent meaning of the ayah is kill the kuffar that are closest to you on the battlefield when they are engaged with you in warfare. وَلْيَجِدُوا فِيكُمْ غِلْظَةً, and fight them with extreme animosity. وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, and know that Allah is with the ones who fear Him. But there is the word yalunakum, closest to you. And the Sufiya who do Tafseer Ishari of this ayah, they say that the zahir of the ayah is apparent. The apparent of the ayah, we agree with it. Amanna wa sadaqna. Yes, it is about qital, it is about jihad. But also it is about killing your ego, your nafs. Because that is the closest to you, the closest kufr to you. Kafir means somebody who does not agree to something, right? The kafir, somebody who rejects something. So your nafs, your ego rejects the righteous path. That is the closest kafir, the closest rejector to you. So kill it first. And then they bring another dalil, another burhan, with the second part of the ayah, وَعَلَمُوا أَنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَ الْمُتَّقِينَ, and know that Allah is with them who fear Him the most. So they say because yalunakum and muttaqeen, these two words have been injected into the context. This also refers to your ego, and that Allah is saying that you should kill your ego, the ego that keeps you from doing righteous things. So we agree to it. This is Tafseer Ishari. No problem with that. The zahir is agreed upon. And then there are other lata'if, other isharat in the ayah. So this should be cleared in your mind once and for all. There's a difference between Tafseer Batini and Tafseer Ishari. Now there are Sufiya, Mutaakhirin Sufiya, that do Tafseer Batini, which is totally wrong. Remember, Tafseer Batini is kufr, because you can change the meaning of any word to your liking, because you've done away with the tradition. You say it is Tafseer Ra'i al-Mujarrad. You're not going to take into account any tradition. All the anchorage has been removed. And so you go to language itself alone. Not the context, not even language in the context. Just the language itself, the juzur, the root words, or the sarf, the nahv, the grammar. And you just look at that to come up with a Tafseer Batini. And you discard the zahiri, you discard the apparent meaning of the verse, the apparent agreed upon meaning, the apparent meaning that nobody can disagree upon. Nobody who speaks that very language can disagree upon. The language is always understood with the help of literature. And if you do away with literature, you do away with the athar, you do away with the riwayat, you do away with the historicity, you do away with all the anchors, with all the anchorage that surrounds it, that encapsulates its meanings, that enhances its meanings, that makes up its meanings, then what is left is your own ra'i, your own single opinion. And then your opinion can be anything. Anything. You can come up with anything. And then you can say, this is through my methodology. This is what I have come up with. And this is based on the juzur, on the root words, on the root word meanings, on the roots of the words. And because this root of this word and so, and the root of this word is so and so, that is why the meaning of this word is so and so. Even if this word is used in the context in a different meaning, or it is classically understood in a different meaning than what you are coming up with, you're going to discard that, and you're going to come up with all kinds of, blames and all kinds of things that even the mustashriqeen do, the Orientalists. When they look at the Quran, they say do away with the tradition, because the tradition has been created for the very reason of upholding this text. And I'll come to that in another video of mine, inshallah. I'm going to tackle this in detail, inshallah. But doing away with all the tradition, it's really a way of the Orientalists. not a Muslim way. When you do away with the tradition, you can come up with anything you like. It's just you and whatever comes into your mind. It's just you sitting alone in a room and thinking about different things and saying, oh, how about if I do an exegesis of this as this, or how about I do an exegesis of this as that? Oh, this word, this comes from the root word this. And so how about if this does not mean this but means that? You see where I'm going from, where I'm going with this? Really, the sky is limit. It's like a creative writing class. Write whatever comes to your mind. You have removed all the anchorage. The zahir of the ayat is discarded with. No tradition, no adab, no literature, no nothing. Just the language in itself without the context, even without the context in which the verses are written themselves. And so there is no end to whatever you can come up with. There is no end to the kind of exegesis that you can do. So this is the difference between Tafseer Batini and Tafseer Ishari. And if you want to go into details about this, again, you can refer to my previous video, longer video. But there are some shurut لقبول التفسير الإشاري. There are some prerequisites for Tafseer Ishari. Without those prerequisites, and there are 7 in number, again, I'm not going to go into detail. But without those 7 prerequisites, the Tafseerul Ishari cannot be taken as a viable exegesis. And the first prerequisite is that the zahir of the ayah is not discarded with. First and foremost, the zahir of the ayah stands as an anchor. The zahir of the ayah, the meaning of the ayah in the context. All right, now Dr. Hany Atchan, because he's working within this tradition of the Quranists. And the Quranists, they have taken from Mu'tazila, as far as their aqli exegesis is concerned, they have taken from Tafseer Batini of the Sufiya and the Shi'iyya, and they have mixed the two together and they have come up with their own Tafseer Batini. And so really, I just want to very quickly read something for you from Ghulam Ahmed Pervez, Pervez's Tafsir, the exposition of the Quran. It has been published in English language. And this is Surah Al-Jinn, Surah 72. This is page 1022 from his exegesis of the Quran. قُلْ أُوحِيَ إِلَيَّ أَنَّهُ اسْتَمَعَ نَفَرٌ مِّنَ الْجِنِّ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا. And see how he does his exegesis. Ghulam Ahmed Pervez says, O Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, tell them, I have been informed through wahy that a group of people from an unfamiliar wandering tribe secretly listened to the Quran and then said, verily we have heard something wondrous. And later, a couple of ayahs later, he says, وَأَنَّا ظَنَنَّا, this is ayah 5. And we simple people used to believe that human beings, al-ins, whether living in urban areas, the insan, or away in the desert, wal-jinn, would not dare to attribute anything false to Allah Almighty. وَأَنَّا ظَنَنَّا أَن لَن تَقُولَ الْإِنسَانُ وَالْجِنُّ عَلَى اللَّهِ كَذِبًا. Al-insu wal-jinnu ala Allahi kadhiba. I'm not a hafiz, so I apologize if I make a mistake in reciting the ayah. But look at this. Just look at this. Now this is Ghulam Ahmed Pervez. I talk a lot about Ghulam Ahmed Pervez when I'm talking about Dr. Hany Atchan, because really Dr. Hany Atchan is not even close to the scholarship of Ghulam Ahmed Pervez. Ghulam Ahmed Pervez was a very thoroughly learned person. Dr. Hany Atchan doesn't even come close to Ghulam Ahmed Pervez in scholarship. Study Ghulam Ahmed Pervez's books and you'll know what I mean. Ghulam Ahmed Pervez was really the most famous Qurani hadith rejecter of my region by far. And this is what Dr. Hany is saying as well. He's not saying anything new. It is the same Tafseer Batini that Ghulam Ahmed Pervez has done of the Quran, that Dr. Hany Atchan is doing. What new is he bringing to the table? Jinn is a metaphor. It's not real. Jinn are not real. Malaika are not real. Adam is not a prophet. This is the exact same thing that Ghulam Ahmed Pervez said. He said he has a book on this, Shaitan and Adam, that Adam is a metaphor for humankind, that Jannah is a society, is a metaphor for a perfect society. Malaika don't exist, they are metaphors. Jinn is metaphor for people living in the desert. Dr. Hany says that Jinn is, in his latest video, the Qareen, he says that Jinn is a metaphor for what I forget what exactly, but it is a metaphor nonetheless. I think for short-tempered people, or it is a metaphor for the subconscious part of the brain, which is influenced by the shaitan. And the shaitan is the unconscious part of your psyche, which does not receive directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or something along those lines. So what is this? This is discarding the zahir of the ayah. The zahir of the ayah says jinn wal ins. Jinn as opposed to ins. Simply denotes and simply means that jinn is a makhluk other than the ins. It is distinguished in the very ayah, in the very text of the Quran. Anyways, I'm not going to go into detail. Like I said, if you want details on this, please visit my longer video, link of which I will be giving in the description. But this was just a short video, a short podcast that I wanted to do on Tafseer Batini. Inshallah, I'll return to Tafseer Batini in detail in an upcoming video, inshallah, bi'awnihi ta'ala. I intend to make a detailed video on Tafseer Batini, but in that video, I will not be talking about Dr. Hany Atchan specifically. I intend to go back to classical sources and translate some of these quotations for you guys to make you better understand what Tafseer Batini is in a greater detail, with amthila, with a lot of examples. And so that requires time. I'll have to do a lot of research about it in detail and do a deep dive into the history of exegesis and history of the Batini exegesis in Islam, the tradition of Tafseer Batiniyyah in Islam. Inshallah, I have that on my agenda. I have that planned for future. Inshallah, I'll do that. But for now, I hope this suffices. And this is pretty much it. Again, if you're confused by any of the things that I've said in this video, quickly, please go back to my original video, longer video, 5 hours video, sit down and watch it. And you will find the answers of all of the questions that you might have by watching this shorter podcast, because I explain it in chapters in detail, all about the Tafseer al-Batini and Ishari and how it began, and I quote a lot from Muqaddimah Ibn Taymiyyah. So you can refer to that video of mine. And that's pretty much it, guys. So take care of yourselves and be good. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.